Aspirational hero. Move that aspirational, 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 move that aspirational goal. So the aspirational heroes need to be there. They need to be pure 100% from the beginning. They need to be at that unattainable goal of perfection and good and hopeful and inspirational and all of that. Move that aspirational, 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 move that aspirational. Stop deconstructing heroes. Aspirational or cathartic motivational. Move that aspirational, 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 move that to aspire. Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. And yes, you are welcome for that. Move that aspirational. Good to see everyone. Welcome back to another office hours live stream. I will try to keep it a filled up full hour. I didn't complete as many things as I thought I would for this week to review, but I do have some things to talk about. So we'll see how that works. Let's welcome the chat first though. Ghost Planet Maxine, good to see you there. Enzolo, welcome. Private Eye in Retrospectiva. Eldritch Fan left a super chat here too. Oh, Big Al popping in. Say hi. Good to see you there. Where did that super chat go? Oh, there it is. I just want to miss it. Eldritch Fan said, I got work and can't make the stream, but I just heard they're making Goonies 2. I shudder to think of it. Now that I've ruined your weekend, I go. I actually heard about this. I think it was first announced the weekend, or the first time I heard of it anyway, was the weekend of Beetlejuice 2 as soon as it started doing so great, you know, because I mean, compared to the recent box offices, Beetlejuice 2 raked in a pretty good amount for that weekend. And I don't know if that was the thing that people were looking at to see, hey, you know, are these nostalgia sequels really going to make it or not, you know, or something. I mean, I don't know, because obviously Ghostbusters Afterlife had done well, and I don't know how the other Ghostbusters movie did. So I don't know. Apparently Steven Spielberg is at the helm or involved. Last I've heard, I don't know if all of the original cast is signed on yet. Maybe they are signed on by now. I don't know. I don't know. There's something to be said for, it's great when the original people come back to want to continue a great story. It's hard not to see these things as just little cash grabs at this point, though. I mean, honestly, what the F have you been doing? You know, how many years, how many decades have we longed for sequels to some of these movies? And what the hell have you been doing? You know, I mean, seriously. And now all of a sudden, oh, now that like everything Hollywood throws against the wall just falls off and dies, you know, now it's like, oh, maybe we should do that thing they always wanted us to do, you know, and you think, okay, well, whatever, at least they're doing it for you now. But so much time has passed. I mean, it, as I said about Ghostbusters Afterlife, I think it was, I had some, you know, issues with it here or there, but I think it was just about the best it could be, having been so freaking long. I mean, all of our main cast are just so old at this point. All you can do is just make it about the next generation or whatever. I'm, as a Ghostbusters fan, I was really pissed off about that. I mean, how long had we been wanting a Ghostbusters 3? I don't care whose fault it was, Bill Murray's or the studios or whatever. I mean, it's annoying, you know? Really, the real Ghostbusters 3 is the video game that we got, which was epic. But like I said, I thought, you know, Afterlife was about as best as it could be after having so much time passed. Still had a problem with the whole Egon parting ways with the group there and everything, but you know, whatever. I don't trust just because Steven Spielberg is back. Steven Spielberg was back and gave us some Indiana Jones movies that were pretty crappy too. So I know, good for Steven Spielberg. I mean, he's not, his name on something doesn't mean a grade A quality. Heck no. Richard Donner directed that movie, and sadly, Richard Donner's no longer with us. And a lot of people just talk about Spielberg for the Goonies. Like, Donner was a huge part of that. So, you know, Lucas is part of it too, and everything. But I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know enough about it yet. But I'm really ticked off every time I see these people finally go back to try to give us extensions to these franchises that were so great, and that of course we would have loved, you know, movies about these, you know, franchises or whatever back in the day. I was like, why were you just turning a complete and total deaf ear to us? And now that you don't even know what to do with yourself because Hollywood can't produce something that's good to save its life. I mean, Minecraft just came out, and that's, I guess, doing sort of well. I don't know enough about it to criticize it or praise it because I loathe the very idea of the game of Minecraft. So I don't, I have no idea. I have no standing on what the movie's good or not. But is it really that good? I'd be shocked if it was really amazing. My guess is that it's probably just entertaining. Nowadays, that's enough. If it just doesn't suck, that's enough, you know, for a film to do well. So I don't know. I don't know. It's just annoying. It's annoying. uh, Electric Barbarella, welcome. Imaginative Hobbyist says, who else is watching the Ten Commandments on ABC? Yeah, actually say I'm not since I'm streaming, but it is Palm Sunday, so happy Palm Sunday to those of you who celebrate. We just came from Mass, and actually it was cool. I you know, serve as a lector at my parish, meaning the person who gets up and reads the readings for the scriptures of that Sunday or whatever. And Palm Sunday is a big deal reading. If you are Catholic or you've been to a liturgical style, you know, denomination church or whatever that does Palm Sunday, you know, when it gets to the gospel reading, it's the whole story in the Gospel of Luke, from Jesus at the Last Supper all the way to being buried in the tomb. So that's a lot. That's a lot to read. And they divide it up, or the priest reads Jesus's lines. The lector, the main lector, myself, reads all the narration, which is most of it probably, maybe tit for tat with Jesus's lines there. And then the congregation reads the crowd, you know, the crowd saying, crucify him, give us Barabbas, you know, all that kind of stuff. And but there are this one little extra role somebody needs to read, like the apostles' lines or Pontius Pilate's lines, Herod's lines, stuff like that. It's a smaller role, but somebody needs to do that. Well, the guy who is supposed to rotate with me back and forth with the lecturing, usually we both do it, but he wasn't there this week. So Sound Engraver did it. Sound Engraver helped me lecture at Mass, and she handled it like a champ. She was doing that secondary role there. And, you know, even though she's not a public reader, she's a performer. She sings and plays violin and everything, so she knows the gist. She was able to project and do well and everything. But yeah, hard to believe that the week before Easter, Holy Week's upon us. Alec Purdue, good to see you. Yes, finally made it to a live stream. Stress levels 99%, Darth Enigma, Ace Moic, Studio 96 Films, and so many more people. Welcome to you all here. Make sure I didn't miss any chats or whatever. Of course, Big Al, our trivia master. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire grossed one blah 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 numbers in the United States and Canada, millions of territory. See, I don't even know. I'm so bad at numbers. I'm so bad at numbers. My dyscalculia is so bad. It's not just a matter of me forgetting numbers or not being able to keep track of numbers. I also have no clue if that's a big number for whatever. You know, I tell Sound Engraver the story that I drive this little tiny Chevy Sonic, small little car. My daughter calls it the iconic car because of my talks about iconic Superman and iconic Batman and so forth. And I love the little car. It gets great gas mileage, And I was at a gas pump this one time. And you know me, I don't like to be bothered. I don't like to chat with people. I'm an introvert. I have very little social energy to begin with. And I was at a gas station and some guy, it was nice, whatever. He's next to me. He's like, but that car gets good gas mileage. And I was like, oh, yeah. Well, what do you get? What do you get per mile on that? I have no clue how much gas mileage my car gets. I have no clue. If I figured it out, if you told me, I'd forget it 3 hours later. I don't hold on to numbers. I don't know numbers. So I said, oh, honestly, I really don't know. I've never even looked at it. Well, just guess. Like, if you had to say, what's your gas mileage? I'm like, sir, I don't really know, sir. I don't understand gas mileage. I don't really know. Well, just guess, though. Just guess. 50,000 miles of the gallon. I don't know. I said some ludicrous number, and he's like, 500 miles. I'm like, I told you I don't know. Stop it. Stop trying to force me to have a social conversation with you. Anyway, sorry. Had to vent there. Yeah, exactly. Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy were full control of Dial of Destiny. Yeah, his name attached means nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yeah, I forgot Christopher Columbus. You're right to mention hobbyist. Yeah, producers often come up with a name of it. And Spielberg produced a lot of things he didn't direct. But still, once the rubber meets the road, it's the director there doing the making the film with the actors, and it's the director's vision that comes forth. So I just don't like it when people totally omit the director, But yeah, you're right, Chris Columbus too. All right. Is going to nap. She's awake. Thank you very much, my dear. Let's see. Oh man, I hope they don't do a sequel to Last Starfighter. Just stop it with the sequels. Just stop it. I mean, if it was actually good faith, if they were making these sequels in good faith, if they were, really coming back to these stories because they truly loved them and they truly wanted to give fans what they wanted and everything, but it's just so much time has passed. We know that you're desperate, Hollywood. So it's just this last-ditch effort, which is really more of a slap in the face to all of us who've been telling you to make it for so long and you've just been flat out ignoring us. It just feels gross. It feels dirty. It feels like no. I don't like it. I don't like it. I mean, I still went to see Beetlejuice 2. And I didn't have to. I told you guys before, it wasn't horrible, but it was nothing like what a sequel should have been. It felt way more like a I forget the writers, the guys who I've been working with Tim Burton a lot on the Wednesday series and whatnot. It felt more like their film than it did a Tim Burton film. I don't know. Anyway, Alec Purdue, thank you for the $10 super chat. Said, on the subject of Christianity, what are your thoughts on the King of Kings movie coming out this Easter? Light of the World is another animated Christian film coming out. Yeah, somebody asked me about that last stream. I don't know anything about it. I don't know any. I usually don't gravitate toward movies that dramatize the Bible. I honestly, like, I study the Bible, and I'm still a piece of that needs to be studied according to its genre and so forth, like that. And as well as spiritually, and I just never really enjoyed biblical interpretations in terms of films. I don't know, just not really into it myself. But I mean, apparently it's like kicking Snow White's butt or something, which isn't hard to do, So I don't know. I'm not against it by any means. Go enjoy it if you like it. It's great. Yeah, Sound Engraver. That's why I do the taxes. That's right. Yeah, she came in the other day and she's like, we made blah 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 last year, and I'm like, is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. She's like, blah 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 last year. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like if she said we made $10 last year, I would know that was bad. If she said we'd made millions of dollars, I would know that was good. But anything in between those two, I got no idea. Let's see what else is going on here. Horrid Films, good to see you there. Elf Runner. Michael Scimbati, good to see you there. Channel member. Says, what is your end-all, be-all iconic Joker story? If you worked at a comic store and someone asked you, I love Joker and want to learn more, which would you recommend? That's a hard question. That's a hard question. I don't know. I don't gravitate towards the villains as much as you do. So I don't think I've read as many Joker stories as you have. That's not really what I go to comics for. But obviously he's an iconic villain, so I've certainly read plenty of his stories. I appreciate the question, but I'd have to think about that a bit. One thing that I never read the what's it called? Three Jokers, the Jeff Johns story that was supposed to be part of the New 52 before Dan DiDio decided to take a crap all over it and bring Bendis in to ruin it. Not New 52, DC Rebirth, sorry. Fanman read the Three Jokers and thinks it's the most amazing thing ever. I have a hard time imagining that it would be good, but I haven't read it yet, so I can't say that it's not or whatever. I actually own it because I was like, all right, well, let me give it a chance. But I don't really like the concept. I don't like the premise of it. But yeah, you know. Sounding greater. I was just talking about the taxes, and she came over and said, we made blah 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 last week. She said, I can't tell if you're saying blah 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 to keep it private or because you already forgot. To be 100% honest with you, both. I truly have no clue what number you said the other day. I don't know. Numbers. Oh, and I know, I'm a man. I'm supposed to be all, math. And I'm like, no, I can't. Just I guess I'm so right brained or something. I don't know. I'm just the abstract thinker. I love analyzing movies. We can analyze some literature. We can talk about poetry. We can talk about art. Man, let's dig into some music. But anything that's like, well, like music per se. I I play bass and growing up, I loved just jamming. And I knew the basics. I knew the basic notes. I knew enough very basic theory just to be able to jam. Someone say, oh, it's in the key of such and such, so I would know certain scales and whatnot. But, like hardcore musical theory, that's way beyond my comprehension level. Sound Engraver knows it big time. She's great. Yeah. Bass. There's this British guy, I think Danny Sapko, who's a bass player that has a YouTube channel. It's pretty funny. I agree, Michael Scimbati. I would not say Killing Joke. Definitely not. Kind of sick of that too. I don't hate Killing Joke. Thought it was fine for what it was. As dark as it is, I do appreciate the character of Oracle and her character progression. I thought it was a real mistake to return her to Batgirl in the New 52. But again, that was more of just Dan DiDio's misguided approach. So, yep. Let's see. I think we got down there to the end of welcoming everybody here. I'm trying to think what I should do first. Maybe, I did go ahead and label the stream the decline of TV series because I don't have a lot of reviews. So maybe I'll just talk about this briefly and we'll see how far we get with this. I was thinking about this the other day and I was mentioning it to Sound Engraver. I'd planned on, and maybe I still will. Maybe I'll still cut this video out and label it. I was thinking how J.J. Abrams ruined television or whatever I was going to call it. Obviously, that's a clickbait title. It's not just his fault. And I'm the first one to say that I don't think J.J. Abrams is completely devoid of talent. I think the problem with J.J. Abrams is he has this mystery box formula, and that's just the hill he will die on. And it's what he brings to everything that he apparently makes. Now, I never watched all of Lost, but I know the premise of it. And I know that it was based on this mystery box formula. And the mystery box formula, if you still want to call it a mystery box formula, I usually just call it the cliffhanger formula, is just really what I see started to encroach into television in the 2000s. Now, there's still a lot of great TV in the 2000s. Some of my favorite shows are still going on in the 2000s. But once we get out of that decade, everything just falls apart and everything is written to the next cliffhanger. It's just written to the next cliffhanger, written to the next cliffhanger, and there's no real clear idea of where this ship is going in the end, metaphorically, but literally when it comes to sci-fi and whatnot. I mean, you look at a show like Battlestar Galactica, the remake, or Lost, or whatever, and shows where everyone's invested because they need to find out what's going on, the mystery gives you just a little bit more and it keeps you coming back. And that's a great way to keep audiences engaged. Sure. If you actually have a plan behind it, if you have a well thought out plan behind it, which justifies the themes you've been playing with, which justifies everything that's been happening. And with those shows, with Lost, with Battlestar Galactica, and a lot of other shows, we started to see that by the end of it, they either just invented an ending by the time they got there, or they'd never really been consciously working towards that ending. Now, on the polar opposite of the spectrum, I'll give you an example of really good writing for television. Babylon 5 is much as I think J. Michael Straczynski's gone off the deep end these days, that is one heck of a solid show. He knew where he wanted to take that show. He knew he had the chapters divided for the show, and things were thrown at him along the way. He had to kind of adjust and mold things together as he went. With was it Michael O'Hare? Is that his name? The guy who played Captain Jeff there. Him leaving the first season, so he had to adjust and mold, and then not knowing if they'd get the fifth season or not, so he had to adjust and whatnot. That's fine. You need to think on your feet as a writer, especially as a writer of television. But that's an example of he knew exactly where that story was going, and he had everything paced just right. He had little mini arcs and adventures and ends to the season and things to deal with, challenges for the season and so forth, going through. It's a wonderful show. It's a wonderful television series. It's a great example of, it's something to study, learning how to write, not even just television, obviously, because I've never written for television myself, but I just have studied writing. And I know that, when you're writing, say, a novel series, or a chapter series or something like that, and you've got to make sure you've got a firm handle on where you're going in the end, but also keep people engaged along the way. And, you don't even need to know, because one of my favorite television shows ever, I've said before, is Stargate SG-1. And they didn't know that they were going to end with the Ori when they were first making the series or anything. So you don't necessarily have to know everything that's going to happen in the end. But they know that this is what this show's about. It's about these characters and the relationships between the characters, the dynamic. They're going out on these little hero's journey adventures. It's about, and I've heard the producers even say, they knew that they wanted these characters to be able to be the kinds that people would want to invite into their homes each week. That's, spell success. And so they were true to that. So whatever, new bad guy that came up or new arc they developed, it was all true to the spirit of the show. And it continued to give fans that, main spirit there. They never, Stargate's also a good example because they spun off to Stargate Atlantis, which kept the same idea, the same spirit, beloved by fans. And then they decided to throw all that crap out and do Stargate Universe, which is completely different, whole different approach, whole different feel. Let's not have any characters that people can root for. Let's just make it all a bunch of dark nihilism, like Battlestar Galactica in terms of the character arcs and whatnot. And it was just crappy. So, that's another good example. But we saw that happen. Maybe start to creep in a little bit with the aughts, and then in the last decade, the teens. What happened? I've talked about watching Sleepy Hollow, watching Grimm. A lot of these shows start out with such a good premise. And what happens? They just lose it. It's I don't know if it's the producers themselves that just don't don't know how to write anymore, so they don't know how to continue to develop in a well, paced manner the things that they begin with, or if it's sort of studio execs coming in and just saying you need to change this up, and throw this over here, and make this character like that, so we can just kind of shake it up and keep viewers interested for the next season or whatever. But I do think it comes to a lot of that. Let's just keep shaking things up so they'll never know what to expect next, and they'll keep coming back. And that's a horrible, horrible way to approach storytelling. Again, that's the Dan DiDio's biggest mistake ever. He just couldn't handle if things were going well. DC Rebirth's happening. Everyone's coming back to DC. Everyone's loving it. Oh, I gotta shake that up. Why? Why? I mean, I'll never forgive that man for ending Tomasi's epic Superman run. Dan Jurgens' great run on Action Comics. Anyway. Television series now, it's gotten to the point where who cares? Like, if there's a new TV show, oh, did you think, so even, it's kind of like comic books now. You know how if back in the day, I can look at this Mark Waid Captain America title, from the 90s or whatever, or as I said, J. Michael Straczynski's great comics of back in the day, or Babylon 5. Anything that those people are doing today, pass. I don't care. Their names don't drive me to it at all, because they I don't know what's going on today. But especially in television, people will say, oh, but Cooper and Wright are doing this other show. Don't you want to check that out? No. Especially not after they did Stargate Universe. Pass. I'm good, thanks. So I don't know. Television is. I did really enjoy Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Even if you don't like the premise or the content of the show or whatever, that was a smartly written show. Season to season, they had a good plan. It was just that old school style of let's get a good, a well-developed, well-paced series out of this, And I'd imagine that's about the good TV shows. I don't know. Maybe you remind me of something else, but Sound Engraver and I have almost finished showing. I finished taking her through Stargate SG-1, and we watched the Arc of Truth. Now we're on season 3 or season 4 rather, of Atlantis with Colonel Carter. And once we get through this, then we'll watch Stargate Continuum, the other SG-1 film, and then we'll watch the last season of Atlantis. Then after that, we're probably going to move to some other things: Babylon 5, Farscape. I even like Andromeda, Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda. That kind of lost its way a little bit towards the end as well, but actually the end season was pretty good. But it has problems as well, but it's still fun. It was still great fun. Let me get to some super chats here that I've been neglecting. Studio Super said, I try to put it up there. I try to analyze those. Sometimes I analyze wrong, or I'm not as deep, or I don't want to have the scholarly background. For I don't want to have that scholarly background. What I know, I know. What I don't know. This be my way. That's fine. I mean, I'm with you when it comes to not wanting to get the academic background. I mean, I am an academic, right? I study. I'm a professor. I have 2 graduate degrees. I teach, but I hate academia, and I hate the academic mindset and the way of thinking. But that's only because of the recent, 60s on, and all the crap that the academics, quote unquote, poured into that institution, which was horrible. Back in the days, you went to go get a master's or a PhD in literature. You actually learned about the literature. You actually delved into the literature and what it meant, and you weren't just trying to use it as a stepping stool for a political agenda. So yeah, it's but you don't need to be an academic. You don't need to be a school studied scholar. I mean, we got the internet now. It's not hard for anybody to look something up, and you go by your interests too, right? If you really like a movie and it really resonates with you, I always tell my students, well, go follow your interests, follow what you're into. If you love that movie, start asking yourself why you loved it. What was it about that movie that makes you love it so much as opposed to other movies? And don't just fall back on the easy, well, it's just my taste. Well, yeah, there's something, there's something to taste, but there's more to it than that. So, the more there's a great lie. A lot of people think that, well, if I analyze it and pick it apart, then I just won't enjoy it. Oh, no. if you analyze it right, you'll enjoy it so much more. I've analyzed to death the 2012 The Avengers, Marvel's The Avengers, and I freaking love that movie. Same thing with 78 Superman, and The Incredibles. That movie is just amazing. Studio Super says, I love Star Trek, the original series, and The Incredible Hulk, as each episode was a contained story. I love it when, if you don't know the whole backstory, you can jump in and enjoy any episode. That's a good point. I'm glad you bring that up, because there's a balance that I think any successful, if a TV series is going to be well written, it does need to balance the episodic with the long form arc. And I think you have to do that. I think a lot of shows fall into, we're just going to tell this long form story, especially a lot of the streaming series that we have on streaming services now. It's not a problem if they do that, but they need to be short. When you've got a streaming a series that's going on for so long and they're just still slogging through this long form, it's like, man, come on. Books are divided into chapters for a reason. And they're not just divided into chapters so people can hold their place better. They're divided into chapters so that you can have like a little mini arc. And that's how good stories are told, is, developing these little sort of mini arcs and whatnot on your way to the big arc. So yeah, there has to be a real good balance between the episodic. I've been watching X-Files, for example, and they're doing it great. They're doing it so wonderfully. I just watched in season 6, the Christmas episode from season 6 with Lily Tomlin and Ed Asner in the haunted house. So good. And that didn't really have anything to do with the longer arc, but it was a nice little reprieve here and there, Also, speaking of Millennium, I should say that, season 3, I'm still getting through it, seeing what it does for trying to course correct or whatever. But I got to the Halloween episode. I forget the name of it. But I haven't researched anything. I'm just watching Millennium fresh, like somebody would have watched it, on air back in the day. And it's this opening, the show opens, the scene right before the credits, so the very opening scene, there's this B horror film movie producer who's like sleeping with his actress or whatever, typical. And the guy, he's got this like old gray hair and everything, and he looks like a movie producer, his outfit and everything, and this, gray hair. And I'm like, it looks like that is Paul Stanley, from Kiss. And I love Kiss. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Paul Stanley's actually in this show. That's awesome, and so the opening scene plays out and he gets killed or whatever. And then in the opening credits, comes back on and fades in. It says special guest star Kiss in the episode. So, and it was Kiss in like 1997 or 8. So this was like the Psycho Circus era when they put the makeup back on. It was like bittersweet. It was nice to see the makeup, but it was so sad for the unmasked era to be over with. And Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer were amazing, but they got back Peter Criss and Ace Frehley. And so they had their little bit parts in it. And then of course, Gene Simmons plays a psycho in it later and stuff. So it was cool. It was cool. I don't know really why I got off on that. I think I just wanted to geek out about good music. Michael Skimbody, thank you there. Flexing your member for 4 months badge. Said in Legends of the Dark Knight, the issue 65-68, going sane, Joker kills Batman, Joker retires and falls in love with a woman who's kidnapped Spirit. I haven't really reached those issues going back to in my reread right now. So once I get there, I'll be sure to talk about them, because I am covering each episode as I go through each issue. Sorry, getting mixed up talking about television and comics and whatnot. But yeah, so I'll definitely get to those and I'll talk about them when I get to them. I think, what am I on? I think I'm in the issue 40s or something like that right now. I think on my reread, and I didn't read every issue back in the day. I did read some issues, but again, this is like when I was, 11, 12, so it's been a while, been a little bit. Alec Purdue said the mystery box sounds like a precursor to the binge model of writing. Yeah, he's got a whole TED talk on it, actually. You can and he's just very proud of his mystery box, and I don't know, maybe it worked for stuff. I don't know. I haven't watched everything he's ever done. To be honest, I did enjoy I know some like hardcore Star Trek fans are really against it, but I enjoyed the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie because he solidly set it up as an alternate universe. And I appreciated the fact that he wasn't so pretentious as to say he could go ahead and write a new story in the, old universe. Well, this is the prequel to all those things you know and love. I didn't want him to do that, and he didn't. So I appreciated that, and I was willing to let a lot of things slide and just kind of go along for the ride. I enjoyed it. That's really the only one I saw in that series, though. My dear Sound Engraver, for $5, says, I'll finally have the structure finished for my 5-part science fiction epic. Feels great to know how each book works and how it all ends. Yeah, you have to balance your time, too, as a writer. I know Sound Engraver is constantly balancing, working on actual scenes and going through it, but also trying to know what the outline is for her structure there and everything, where it's all going. I think there was one more super chat I just want to get before I miss it. Crystal Ashes, good to see you there. So if you analyze and pick apart something only to realize that you no longer like it, then chances are it wasn't very good to begin with. You're right. You're right. You're right. I know I mentioned, being a musician or playing bass, you can love a song. You think, oh, this song is so fun. And, you can get too familiar with something. There is such a thing as that. So you try trying to learn the line and you're playing it and everything. And it's maybe listening to it doesn't feel quite as magical as it did beforehand, but I don't think that has to do with picking it apart. I think that has to do with just being a little too familiar with it for a time. If you watch a movie over and over and over and over and over again, then, it's not going to feel as magical because you're just too familiar with it. You got to, set apart a little bit. Speaking of, maybe let me do this as a little tease. Let's see here. Pull this up. I talked about the novel Shelley by Doug Brody a while ago and how much I loved it. It was great. He's actually going to be on my channel May 31st, I think, unless I'm mixing that date up too. May 31st, that's Saturday. So about a month out because his sequel to Shelley is coming out. And if you haven't read Shelley, you got to go get it. You got to go get it and read it, especially now that the sequel's coming. It's so good. It's so fun. And I've been looking at his Ship series, and he's somebody else that was, heavily influenced by like the X-Files era and that kind of stuff. And writes just really great stuff. So he's actually going to be on the channel doing interviews. And I don't think I've mentioned this. I'm just kind of saying this right now. It's just sort of a tease to maybe whet your appetite and make you keep it on the calendar to come back for this interview, because he's actually worked in Hollywood quite a bit. Let me share my screen here. And there it is. His IMDb, Doug Brody's IMDb. I just want to show you a couple things that he's done here. He is a storyboard artist and something called a prop illustrator. I'll have to ask him about that when he's on. What's the difference between storyboard artist and prop? I know what a storyboard artist is, but I don't know what a prop illustrator is per se. But if you look at some of the movies he's been on, first Van Helsing, storyboard artist of Van Helsing, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I mean, he's been a part of some major epic films. Thor, the first Thor movie. I mean, that's awesome. So I'll be asking him, of course, about his writing, and we'll talk about, all of his other stuff as well. But, his career and whatnot. But just wanted to tease that to make that interview. Should be fun. So I'll learn what a prop illustrator is. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to get that out because that's part of what I wanted to say too. I think I've caught up with super chats here. Let me cover a couple of things. Now, in terms of what I've been reading, I'm still not done with Yoda Dark Rendezvous. I'm so close to being finished with it. Really ticks me off too. I ordered a copy offline, and I wanted to use copy because I didn't want the new Legends copy. I wanted a used copy. And they sent me this copy with this crappy sticker, like right over Yoda's head. Like, what are you talking about? I'm still trying to use some Goo-Gone or something and get that off, but I'm still working on it because it's still the cover itself is slick enough that I can still just kind of peel it off, but it's a process. But hey, that's one of the pitfalls when you buy used books. You're gonna sometimes get these stupid stickers on things. But anyway, it's so good though. Yoda Dark Rendezvous is so good. I'm still covering the very end of it, and Al and I are going to do a book study of it. We'll probably do it more quickly paced. We won't do just a couple chapters each time. We'll probably just do like maybe 2 or 3 sessions and cover it in that. But what I love about Yoda Dark Rendezvous, this is my best way to pitch it for you. If you haven't heard about it, or you're not sure if you really want to read along with us or whatever, this is my best way to pitch Yoda Dark Rendezvous. One of my favorite scenes in all of the Star Wars prequels actually comes from Attack of the Clones, the second film, and it's the scene in which Obi-Wan is going to Yoda. He's trying to find the lost planet of Kamino. He couldn't find it in the Jedi archives, and he comes in to Yoda, and Yoda's teaching the younglings. And I love how Yoda interacts with the younglings. He's so grandfatherly in that scene. He's kind of playing with them and this and that. And he's like, "Oh, lost a planet, Master Obi-Wan has," and they're laughing and stuff. And it's just such a kindly Yoda. I love that so much because you don't really see that side of him in Empire Strikes Back, per se, when he on Dagobah. And that's fine. I love Empire Strikes Back, obviously, and I love Yoda in it. And it's a different context, right? Luke Skywalker's not a child. He's the chosen one. There's limited time. They only have so much time to train. So he's got to be kind of strict with him. And, that makes sense. But thinking about Yoda serving in the Jedi Temple for all these years and training so many countless number of Jedi, and, the kind of hard pill to swallow about Jedi taking children, at such a young age and whatnot. I just love knowing that Yoda is just like this kindly old grandfather there, teaching them the real deal, but just being such a sweet guy. That's what I love. That's one of my favorite scenes in all the prequels. And this book is 100% that Yoda. You get that Yoda in this book. You also see how powerful he is. You also see a lot, his potential and whatnot. But that's the Yoda that's in this. And I absolutely love it for that. There's so many great scenes. I actually read a scene to my heroic archetypes class the other day, talking about the aspirational hero, the Paragon. I was talking about a scene in which Yoda's talking to some Padawans who've just lost their masters. And, this one young Padawan is just having a hard time with it. So he's just like, sit here and eating this dinner. This is crap. We should be out there finding who killed him and don't tell me this BS and blah, blah, blah. Typical young angst-ridden teenager stuff. And the kid jumps up and he throws like the dinner across the table, and Yoda just lifts a finger, and all the dinner about to hit the floor stops, and it just reverses itself. The liquid goes back into the cup and everything, and Yoda looks at him. And I was trying to find the scene to read it, but I'll definitely read it during our study. But he's like, "Thank you that I've lived 800 years and have never experienced loss." And he tells him, he's like, you're new at this. That's why it's so hard, but there's a lot more to come. And this is what you need to do. This is how we need to live life and celebrate those. And it's a great, wonderful, wonderful scene that we'll go into a lot deeper when we actually do the study. But yeah, so come back for that. I wanted to talk about that. Crystal Ashes said, "Lost a planet Obi-Wan has. How embarrassing. How embarrassing." That's right. I forgot about that part. And they all giggle and stuff. Yeah. So I love that. I do have one proper review to give in a second, but in terms of what else I've been listening to and whatnot, or reading, listening wise, they just dropped this. You guys know I'm a big Van Halen fan. Love all eras of Van Halen, but my favorite is definitely the Sammy Hagar era. And for the longest time there, once Eddie and Alex got back with Dave and whatnot, they would not release the rights or the music to the Hagar era. They wouldn't let, remasters take place. They just wouldn't let that stuff happen. And maybe at the end, they just didn't have time, because Sammy Hagar and Eddie Van Halen they'd reconciled at the end there before Eddie passed away tragically. They were planning a big, they were going to call it the Kitchen Sink Tour, in which every member who'd ever been a part of Van Halen was going to be out on the road doing their sections of the show, and it was going to be epic. So I don't know if maybe they were getting the ball already rolling on releasing the rights to the Hagar era stuff. Anyway, after, sadly, Eddie passed away tragically, a lot of the Hagar era stuff's able to come out. And I think I showed this before, but they, let's see if I can get this out. I'm knocking everything down. They released this was a great box set. I'm a CD guy. I'm not a vinyl guy. So they released it on vinyl as well. But it was all of the Hagar era CDs, 5150, OU812, Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, of course, great. Balance, and then a bonus CD with some bonus tracks and whatnot. So, and they were all remasters, remasters of it. But what they just released, I just pre-ordered it and got it the other day. Van Halen fans know about the free concert they gave in Dallas. I think it was 1992. There was a concert in the 80s, like 88 or something like that. Sammy Hagar talks about it in his autobiography, in which he had a sinus infection. And he was like starting the concert and trying to sing, and he couldn't even get through the concert. So he had to tell the crowd, can you imagine how mortifying that is? Sorry, guys, I can't get through this crowd. I can't get through the concert, And he said, we'll come back and give you guys a free show, promise. And they did in 1982. And you can find videos of it on YouTube. It's so epic, too. That was my favorite era, that Foreign Lawful Carnal Knowledge tour. That was so great. And it's a great concert they gave. You find some great clips, but they actually released the audio of it. So it's Van Halen live in Dallas, 1991 it is. Cool cover. And they've got the Sure, the crowds there and everything. So this has been cool to listen to, just to hear it, all the songs. Because on online, when you look at the clips, I don't think they usually have the full songs, or maybe they just have one of the full songs and that's it, you know. So it's been really cool to hear the whole live show, because Van Halen, I wish I could have seen them live back in the day, especially with Hagar. I wish I would have seen them live back in the day. But they're kind of like a I love ZZ Top too. ZZ Top was my first concert ever, and they can really they can recreate the sound just as big as it is on the CD without adding a bunch of extra musicians on the road. And that's hard to do for a lot of bands, because on the CD, of course, you're going to overdub guitars, especially if you're a band that only has one guitarist, guitar, bass, drums, and singer, you know. Um, of course, Van Halen with Hagar was able to play guitar too sometimes, and he occasionally would on this or that song, but they didn't have to. They were still able to recreate a sound just as big as it was in the CD, and just as great, you know, even if it's not quite the same because you don't have two guitarists playing or whatever. And the bass player is a big part of that. You know, that's why unsung hero Michael Anthony, you know, is a big part of that, as well as Dusty Hill, the late great Dusty Hill. But anyway, sorry, geeking out on music. I can sit here forever and talk about music, but that's not what this channel likes. Show up with your music, prof. Talk about art. The other thing I want to talk about quickly is I noticed the other day that, yes, indeed, A-Smoke says, you truly are a man of culture, Professor. ZZ Top? Heck yeah, ZZ Top. First band ever to see in concert. I saw them on the Antenna Head. Sorry, you encouraged me, so I want to talk about music for a second or two more. I saw them on their Antenna Head tour, and it was so cool. They had the whole stage. I saw them in an arena, in a amphitheater, or Coliseum, rather, and they had the whole stage set up on one end of the Coliseum, you know, is a giant dashboard of a car. So the big giant gauges and everything. And they were out, you know, of course, Frank Beard set up on the, platform on the drums, but Dusty and Billy are down there on the main stage playing, and they got their, you know, spinning the guitars and the fuzzy guitars and all that kind of stuff. And there was a treadmill going back and forth that Dusty would be on it sometimes. But behind them, how old was I? I was 13, 14 at the time. And behind them were these screens. Don't listen, Sound Engraver. I was 13, 14. You can forgive me for this, but they had these women who were basically buck naked, but they were standing in, like, you only saw their silhouette in front of a screen, and then they were backlit. But that was where the dials, the speedometer and everything should have been, you know, and the giant. And of course, me and my friend, you know, 14-year-olds were like, you know. But I still remember the music of that show. It was so good. And there was a band that opened for them called Cry for Love, I think they're called. They were amazing too, a 4-piece that they didn't stick around much longer after that. I think they only had like another album or so. They were great too. So, all right, sorry. Yes, rest in peace, Eric Carr, the great Eric Carr as well. Okay, other thing I was going to say. I keep a log of all of the books I've read or movies I've watched each year. So I was, you know, putting in some of the new books that I'd read, you know, I was like keeping my tabs on it, and I'll spare a few notes about what I thought of it at this point or that point, you know, and you know, was it a good read? Was it a mad read? Was it, you know, that way if I ever reread it later or rewatch it later, I can kind of compare what I thought back in the day, and especially any notes I might have for for analysis of it, I'll jot down. So I was writing down, I realized this year I haven't watched that many movies at all this year. And it's because I've been going through the television series. You know, I've been going through X-Files and Millennium and all of that. And I have limited time to sit down and watch something quietly anyway. I can't, like, you know, just binge, you know, throughout a whole weekend or something. But I did want to, you know, make sure I start feeding in more films, because I love a good film, especially after I watched Fight the Future. You know, X-Files, I talked about, you know, how the classic films just look so good and the cinematography and whatnot. So I thought, okay, well, what kind of movies should I watch right now in this part of the year, being in such a Star Wars mood and such a sci-fi mood and whatnot? And I picked up a few of the films that I never actually saw all the way through. Some of them I never saw at all. Some of them I would just see a scene or two from. But a lot of the movies that were, maybe they were even sort of like B-rated exploitation movies that were riding the Star Wars wave. You know, once Star Wars came out, everybody was trying to make a little sci-fi film, you know. One of the biggest ones, I just got a nice collector's edition. One of the biggest ones is famously Star Crash. You know, Roger Corman, I'd seen plenty of scenes from this. I know the gist of it, but I never actually sat down and watched the whole thing. So I've got a nice edition of this to watch, which I'll be doing so soon and give a nice review of. I'm really excited about this though, because I know a lot about this. This is a nice steelbook copy of Battle Beyond the Stars. And this is the one that had what's his name? John Boy, or if you know, from It, if you know him like I do. But this is another film based on Magnificent Seven, in turn based on the Seven Samurai. And so I'm really excited to see that in sort of a sci-fi inspired, genre there. So those are a couple films I'm gonna try and watch. And I know these aren't, I'm not expecting high level art necessarily. They were what they were, but they really entertained a lot of people, and a lot of people love them. So I'm gonna give them a chance, and I'll talk about those when I get through it. Oh, interesting. You were right in the middle of typing a comment about Battle Beyond the Stars, Tom Spiegel. Yeah, that's another one that, and there's some other ones too. Galaxina, I think. And, so we'll see. I'll watch these two and see how much I enjoy it if I want to continue with that. And there's still some 90s sci-fi films. I love the 90s sci-fi film era. There were so many great ones, but there are a couple that I still missed from that era too. So that's what I'm doing right now anyway. It might change up in the summer. Let me give a brief review, though, to wrap this up today. I did finish up the second book in the Jedi Academy trilogy, Dark Apprentice. Now, if you've been around for a while, you heard me talk about the first book, Jedi Search. And, as I said about that, I said, it was fun hanging out with the characters, but it was very obviously that this was a very amateur writer at the time. Now, let me be very clear. I am not crapping on Kevin J. Anderson, because he's written some amazing things since then. I love a lot of the things he's written. I guess this was just something really early on in his career, either that or maybe it was just he was too much of a fan of the material, and it does come off as sort of sounding fan fiction-ish. It's not as greatly, it's not very well paced. There are these elaborate scenes that really have nothing to do with the whole. And, so book 2 still feels like that. It's not any better written, although there are times that it really does carry you along and you are engaged and the pacing's great. But it's just, it's hit or miss or whatever. And again, I imagine he was writing these all pretty closely together back in the day. But I don't want to just crap on Kevin J. Anderson. I'll probably say this again when I talk about the third one, because I love, like, for example, his Tales of the Jedi comics. Oh man, I love them. I have the omnibus, and I think it was him and Tom Veitch. I think it starts out with Kevin J. Anderson, then it goes to some Veitch stories, and I think it goes back to Kevin J. Anderson. And you can tell when it moves author, because the Tom Veitch stuff it's interesting stuff, it's interesting lore, but it's just not as fun to follow. It's still fun. You really delve and care about the characters, and it's fleshed out, and it's a fun story. So Kevin J. Anderson's done some great stuff. I actually also have, I wonder if I should, yeah, here, is this it? Let me see. No, this isn't my copy. His Enemies and Allies from Batman, Superman, Enemies and Allies. This isn't it, but I actually have, he was selling off some stuff that he just had around his office, I guess, at some point. And I have his advanced author review copy of Enemies and Allies that he signed, and I ordered that. And I was like, that's so cool, So just because I'm saying poor writing in this does not mean, Kevin J. Anderson. I actually really like him as a writer. But, the writing is just not great here. In Dark Apprentice, there's a lot more things that I think, oh, that shouldn't be there. No, I don't really like that that's there. However, like, for example, there's this whole back and forth throughout this book where Han and Lando keep replaying Sabacc for the Falcon, and Han loses the Falcon to him again, and then they play it again, this and that, and that's just that's too. Get where he's going with it. It's kind of cool how it ends up, but it's you just don't do that. You don't just take things that were really cool from the past and just say, hey, let's do that again. It's no, so there's some things like that. The Dark Apprentice himself has this little confrontation with Master Luke Skywalker of the Academy at that point, which I don't like. I don't like that way it's handled. I get that you need to, this is the second book, and I'm sure he was doing sort of an Empire Strikes Back thing in which we need to end on sort of a win for the villains or whatever at this point and whatnot. But I don't like the way it was handled. It's that just wouldn't, no, that's not how that should be. But it's really cool having read Tales of the Jedi first and all of the Exar Kun and the Masasi and the lore of Yavin 4. Having read that first, when that's something that he went back and fleshed out after he wrote, Jedi Academy, because Luke sets up the Academy on Yavin 4, and you got to deal with the Force Ghost of Exar Kun and so forth. So it's really cool to see all that, play out here, further in the chronology, even if it was written first. I would love one day for Kevin J. Anderson now, being such an experienced writer now, to go back and just rewrite this. Hey, that could never happen, rights and stuff like that. But I think that would be cool. But I'm still, it just ends on a cliffhanger and whatnot. The third book in the trilogy is what I'm going to read next. Champions of the Force, I think it's called. So I'll get through it. I'm just showing one book for all of them because I have the Sci-Fi Book Club's edition, which is all three books in one, which is a really great hardcover edition. So that's where I'm getting through them. But I just wanted to mention or say a few words about Dark Apprentice, because I did say a lot about Jedi Academy. It's there are a lot of fun things in it. Mara Jade finally shows up, which is great, but I don't really like the way Lando's handled. Han Solo, I don't really get what his deal is in this book. What's he so angry about all the time? What's his deal? I don't understand that, especially because he was written quite well in the first book. He was, one of the main heroes, and you were really following and rooting for him and stuff. I also really don't like the way they handled Jason and Janna, the twins. They're just epic little brats. They're 2 years old at this point, which I get it. Okay, two toddlers, terrible twos, but not every toddler is a holy terror. And these kids, we never see a sweet moment with them. They're just always epic brats. They get lost at one point, and I'm like, I hope you do get eaten by the ogre. I don't care about you. I really don't care. And I know those characters aren't like that in the rest of the EU. I know they go on to be central pivotal characters and so forth. But yeah, I didn't like the way they're handled either. Other than that, I do like the general lore, the way it's progressing and whatnot. Akbar is fleshed out a bit. It's neat to see some more of his backstory and whatnot. So I don't know. I'm trying to be balanced because I don't utterly loathe. I don't. It's not very well written, but it's not a book that I would kick aside and say, never read this. This is utter trash from top to bottom, because it's a pivotal part of the EU chronology. It's when Luke sets up his academy. And if you're like me and you want to follow the EU timeline and read all of the story and get the whole story of it, this is books you have to go through. But they're just not as well written as some of the others. And that's okay. Not every writer has to write gold, but I think something like this could probably only happen at the beginning of the EU anyway. I will say this for Dark Apprentice, and I said this for Jedi Search too. Kevin J. Anderson is to be applauded for really taking seriously the all share. Oh, the computer glitched there. I said that Kevin J. Anderson really is to be applauded. He deserves credit for really taking seriously the fact that this is all a shared universe. I mean, you got characters from Courtship of Princess Leia. You got some of the Dathomir witches. One of Melisse is coming to join the Academy. There's Mara Jade. There's characters and references to what happened at the Truce of Bakura. Of course, the Thrawn trilogy, Dark Empire, and all this kind of stuff. So, it really does. Even definitely at this point in the writing of the EU, Kevin J. Anderson was the first one to really take that into account and really reference things that have been happening and make it feel like you're in a big shared universe. And I think his book's probably one of the ones that does that more than any others, period. But I don't know. I'm still going through a lot of the EU anyway. So that's my thoughts on that. Just wanted to give some brief thoughts on it as I move into Champions of the Force, and we'll see how it all turns out and keep going ahead. Again, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to play the Jedi Academy games, which are the last two in the Dark Forces series. And I just wanted to have read the Jedi Academy books before then, me being the compulsive story and order kind of person. All right. Let's see, I got one or two super chats here. Let me just, one at least here, Studio Super. Thank you, Studio Super, for $9.99. Said, from this year's selection of upcoming films, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning may be the only film I see this year. Also, side thing, Dark Universe at Universal Studios looks amazing. Yes, it freaking does, doesn't it? I want to go so bad, but Sound Engraver does not like flying at all. And yeah, we could drive. We're not, in a crazy distance from Florida, but we'd have to take a lot more time off from our schedules to drive, spend any decent amount of time there and drive back. And I have my daughter, half the week, so I'd have to either take her with me at that point or something. And a trip with a special needs child is a very different type of trip than one without a special needs child. And Alyssa she freaking loves amusement parks. She'll ride anything. Nothing scares that kid. She's my roller coaster buddy, right? Sound Engraver doesn't do the roller coaster. She holds her bags for us while we jump on them. So maybe we could all just go and Alyssa will jump on the things with me. She would love it. Nothing scares her. Like you can't. Her favorite game ever is for me to hide somewhere and just jump out and scare the freaking crap out of her. The more she jumps, the more terror rolls up her spine, the funnier she thinks it is. She's fearless. I remember the first time, I think I've told this story before, but it's been years since I told it. The first time when she was little, she was like maybe 2 years old. The first time I ever had that moment of like in a public store, like, where'd Alyssa go? It was in a spirit of Halloween. And I was like, crap, where did she, she's dipped through something and left. And I found her. She was in front of the Exorcist display, cracking up. And every time, Reagan would, the exorcised Reagan, demonic Reagan, head spinning and all this kind of stuff, every time it would stop moving, Alyssa would jump up and hit the trigger again and just die laughing at it on the floor. Just thought it was hilarious. So she can't be scared. So she would love to go. And Sound Engraver maybe she'll fly with me. Maybe she'll fly with us one of these days. We'll fly, I guess, she says. Yeah, so I'm can't wait to go to see it. It does look really cool. As does their Nintendo World. I told Sound Engraver you love Nintendo World because Sound Engraver is all about the retro gaming. I think she'd really enjoy that. And of course, the Harry Potter World. We're both reasonably into Harry Potter, not like Harry Potter heads or anything, but whatever. So yeah, what was the other part of your super chat? Films. I liked the first one, the very first one that came out. Never really followed them beyond that. People said they were good, and that's great. It is kind of hard to believe that a man as old as Tom Cruise can still be going on action film type of adventures. Yes, he's still capable, and that's really admirable, and that's great. I have no problem with that. But in terms of you got to make it make sense in the story for a spy, whatever, to be sent on a mission at that age, at that risk, at that level of physicality. I don't know. I'm not trying to be ageist or anything, but it'll be interesting. Alec Purdue said, is Alyssa into horror? Did she like that Poppy Playtime book? She did like the book. She's not really, Alyssa doesn't quite have the cognitive function to follow a story. She's 13 years old, but in a lot of ways, she's a toddler in her mindset. In some ways, she isn't. She's very intelligent. And, but she's verbal, but it's sort of limited verbal. And she's not somebody who can follow a story unless it's a very rudimentary story. She'll sit there and read her children's books, and she knows the basic gist of that. But I don't think she could even really conceive of something as horror versus another genre. That's one of the ways that makes her just have such a great time with it. She has a blast. Studio Super said, tragic thing is I'm going there with my family next month, but it opens up after we leave. Darth Vader. No. Yeah, that's right. Cause, they haven't quite opened it up yet, but all of the videos just look so cool. I'm really bummed too that I never got to Universal Studio back in the day in the Halloween bashes that they were doing in the 90s or the aughts. They would always honor the original Universal Studio monsters, even when they started to kind of push in some of the, like Freddy Krueger's or whatnot and stuff, or whatever was of the day. They always had that sort of place of honoring the classics. And, you guys know how I freaking love the good classic Universal monsters. And I'll definitely be talking about them again more this season. So, yeah. All right. I have reached my limit, my social energy limit. It is spent. Imaginative Hobbyist, remind me next week to show you the video about Big Al and I in Legend. Because, yeah, Legend's great. It's classic. Tim Curry. Awesome, But yeah, remind me to show you that video. That's all for tonight, though. I have definitely hit my wall. I'm gonna go relax, enjoy my weekend. But hopefully you guys have a great weekend. I know you guys are probably halfway into your weekend. Like I said, Saturday night is basically my Friday night, the way my schedule and work schedule and everything goes. So I got a weekend ahead now. But hopefully you guys enjoy and go watch something good, go read something good, go enjoy a good story. That's what it's all about. And digging into it, letting it have its intended effect on you psychologically and so forth. But until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into those true blue hero stories you love. See you guys next week.